Hello, and welcome to Haunted Slumber. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, haunting stories that gently blur the line between dreams and darkness, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, let your body grow still, and allow the sounds of the outside world to quietly disappear. Tonight, sleep is drawing near, and with it, a story waiting in the shadows. So close your eyes, listen carefully, and let yourself drift into haunted slumber. Story one time. When I was a teenager, I went out walking on the railway tracks without my phone or wallet. Looking back, that was stupid, but at the time I did not think much of it. I used to go there whenever I wanted to get away from everything. The tracks were a few kilometers away from my house, far enough that I could feel like I had left the world behind, but close enough that I could still walk home if I needed to. The place was hard to explain unless you had seen it yourself. There were several railway lines running beside each other, but at least two of them were unfinished or unused. Nobody used those tracks anymore, at least not officially. On one side, there were long walls, old barriers, and strange blocked-off sections that made the whole area feel cut off from the rest of the city. Above parts of the railway, an express highway had been built, so every now and then, huge concrete pillars rose from the ground and disappeared into the road overhead. It was not a beautiful place, but I liked it. There was something peaceful about it. No crowds, no traffic right beside me, no one asking questions. Just the sound of gravel under my shoes, the long empty tracks, and the heavy shadows under the highway. Sometimes poorer people used the tracks as a shortcut because there was a railway station a few kilometers north, but most of the time, I was alone. That was the reason I went there. I liked being alone. But I also had a fear of being followed. I do not mean a small fear. I mean the kind that makes you keep looking over your shoulder even when there is nobody there. Whenever I walked somewhere quiet, I checked behind me again and again. I would walk a few minutes, look back, walk a little more, and look back again. It was almost automatic. That day was no different. I was walking north along one of the unused tracks. The air was still. The gravel shifted under my feet with that dry crunching sound. The walls on my right side blocked off most of the view, and the highway pillars stood ahead at regular distances like giant gray legs. I had already checked behind me several times. There had been nobody there. Then, only a couple of minutes after my last check, I heard it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound came from behind me. It was not loud, but in a quiet place like that, it was impossible to miss. It was the sound of shoes stepping on railway gravel. My whole body tensed. I looked back right away. About 20 meters behind me there was a man. He was older, overweight, and wearing a red shirt. I had no idea where he had come from. That was the first thing that bothered me. I had checked behind me so many times. The tracks were open and straight. There was a wall on my right, so he could not have come from there. There were no nearby side paths that I had noticed. He had just appeared. At first, I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Like I said, people did sometimes walk there. Maybe he was also using the tracks as a shortcut. Maybe he had come from farther back, and I had just missed him. Maybe I was being paranoid again. Still, I did what I always did when someone walked behind me. I slowed down and pretended to take a break. Usually, when someone is behind me, I stop and let them pass. Then, I keep walking once they are ahead of me. It makes me feel better. because I can see them instead of hearing them behind my back. So I stopped near the side of the track and acted like I was just looking around. The footsteps stopped. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe I had imagined it. I turned my head and looked back. The man had stopped too. He was still about 20 meters behind me, standing on the tracks in his red shirt. He did not walk past me. He did not look at the ground. He just stood there. I told myself it could still be a coincidence. Maybe he had also stopped to rest. Maybe he had noticed me looking back and felt awkward. Maybe he was not following me at all. So I started walking again. The gravel behind me started crunching again at the exact same time. My mouth went dry. I walked a little faster. The steps behind me also kept going. I stopped again. The steps stopped again. This time, I did not move for a few seconds. My heart was beating hard, and I could feel my breath catching in my throat. I turned around slowly. The man was still there, still the same distance away, still standing, still facing my direction. I could not tell if he was looking directly at me or just looking toward me, but it did not matter anymore. There was only one conclusion I could make. He was following me. I felt real fear then. Not the kind you get from watching a scary movie. This was different. This was the kind of fear that makes your body feel light and heavy at the same time. My legs wanted to run, but my brain knew running on railway gravel would be hard. The stones move under your feet, and the wooden ties make it awkward to sprint. If I fell, he would catch up. If I twisted my ankle, I was finished. I had no phone, no wallet, no way to call anyone. The way back to where I had entered the tracks was around 1 kilometer away, and my house was even farther. There was no one nearby, no shops, no houses, no police. Just the empty railway, the walls, the highway pillars, and that man behind me. I tried to think. I stepped off the track I was on and crossed over to another unused track beside it. Then I turned south, heading back the way I had come, while he was still on the other track. For a moment, I hoped he would keep going north. If he was just some random man walking to the station, he would have no reason to turn around. I walked south for a bit, then looked back. He had switched tracks. He was now on the same track as me, and he was still following. That was when all my excuses died. He was not pretending anymore. He was not just walking in the same direction by chance. He had turned around because I turned around. He had changed tracks because I changed tracks. I thought about fighting him, but that was impossible. He was much bigger than me, and I was only a teenager. I had nothing on me, no weapon, no phone, not even keys in my hand. If he got close enough, I did not know what would happen, and I did not want to find out. So I kept walking, trying not to panic. There was one place ahead that gave me an idea. On the east side of the tracks, along the wall, there was a narrow alley-like path. It did not really lead anywhere useful, but it had a few branching paths and corners. I had seen it before during my walks. Near the entrance to that path, there was a huge concrete pillar from the highway, and beside the pillar was a large pile of gravel. The pile was massive, maybe around 14 feet tall. It blocked the view from certain angles. As I got closer, I started forming a plan. The entrance to the alleyway was a few meters away from the tracks. If I timed it right, the gravel pile and the pillar might hide me from the man for a few seconds. If I could get off the tracks without him seeing, I could hide behind the pile. He might think I went into the alleyway. If he followed the wrong path, I could run back to the tracks and escape. It was risky, but I did not have anything better. I kept walking like normal, trying not to look too nervous. I listened to his footsteps behind me. Crunch, 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 always there, always the same distance. It felt like he was matching me perfectly, step for step. When I reached the spot in front of the alley entrance, I waited until the gravel pile blocked his view. Then I moved. I stepped off the railway tracks onto the compact dirt between the rails and the wall. I tried to make as little noise as possible. Then I sprinted silently to the north side of the gravel pile and dropped down behind it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he would hear it. I stayed low, pressing myself close to the ground. The dirt smelled dry and dusty. Small stones dug into my hands. I tried to control my breathing, but it was almost impossible. Every part of me wanted to get up and run. I carefully peeked around the side of the gravel pile. The man in the red shirt walked past the tracks. Then he turned into the alleyway. He had taken the bait. The second I saw him disappear into that path, I got up. I did not wait. I did not think. I ran back onto the tracks and sprinted as fast as I could. Running on railway gravel is awful, but fear made me faster than I thought I could be. My shoes slipped. My lungs burned. I almost tripped more than once, but I kept going. I did not look back for a long time because I was terrified I would see him behind me again. When I finally reached a more populated area, I slowed down, but I did not stop. I kept walking until I was back near real streets, real buildings, and other people. Only then did I look behind me. He was gone. I never saw him again. I still do not know where he came from. I do not know why he followed me. I do not know what would have happened if I had not noticed him, or if I had not known about that alleyway, or if he had seen where I hid. All I know is that he appeared out of nowhere on an empty railway track, copied every move I made, and followed me until I managed to trick him. After that day, I never went walking there without my phone again, and honestly, I do not go there much anymore. Because now, whenever I hear gravel crunch behind me, even in normal places, my whole body goes cold. Story 2. I am writing this because the recording said I would not make it past midnight. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds impossible, dramatic, maybe even fake. I thought the same thing at first. If someone had told me this story 4 days ago, I would have laughed and told them to get some sleep. But I am out of normal explanations now, and I do not have much time left to keep pretending this is all some misunderstanding. The voice recorder appeared in my apartment 3 days ago. I did not buy it. I did not order anything online. Nobody came over and left it there. It was just suddenly on my kitchen counter, sitting beside a stack of unopened mail and an empty coffee mug, like it had always been part of the mess. It was an old model, the kind that used a cassette tape. There was no brand name on it that I could recognize. The plastic was dark gray and scratched, and one corner was cracked. A cassette was already inside. The first thing I did was rewind it. I do not know why. Maybe because that is what you do when you find an old tape recorder. Maybe because I wanted to prove it was empty. Maybe because I already felt something wrong about it and needed to know what was on the tape. When I pressed play, I heard breathing. At first, I did not understand what I was listening to. It was soft and slow, close to the microphone. Then I realized it sounded like someone sleeping. Then I realized it sounded like me. That was the first moment I felt afraid. I know my own breathing. That sounds strange, but I do. I have heard it before in recordings when I accidentally left voice memos running on my phone. I have the same little pause before I fully breathe out, the same quiet catch in my throat when I sleep on my back. The recording was me sleeping. At least, it sounded like me. But the timestamp on the recorder did not make sense. It was dated for the next day. I remember laughing when I saw that. I actually laughed out loud, standing alone in my kitchen with that old recorder in my hand. I told myself the date setting was wrong. I told myself someone was messing with me. Maybe the previous tenant had left it behind. Maybe my landlord had a twisted sense of humor. Maybe one of my friends had found a way into my apartment and thought this would be funny. None of those answers felt right, but I held on to them anyway. Then I heard the second recording. This one had no breathing at first, just silence for about 8 seconds. Then my voice came through the speaker, not sleeping this time. Awake, clear, too clear. It said, "If you're hearing this early, don't go to sleep in that room again." After that, there was a small click, like the recorder had been placed on a table. I checked every room in my apartment after that. I opened the bathroom door. I looked behind the shower curtain. I checked under the bed, inside the closet, behind the living room curtains, and even inside the small laundry cupboard near the front door. Nothing was different. Nothing was missing. Nothing looked moved. But I did not sleep in the bedroom that night. I moved to the couch. I left the bedroom door shut and turned on the living room lamp. I did not want to sleep at all, but exhaustion got me eventually. I woke up the next morning with my neck stiff, my mouth dry, and the recorder sitting on the coffee table in front of me. I had left it in the kitchen. There was a new recording on it. I did not make it. I know I did not make it. My hands were shaking before I even pressed play. The recording had only one line at first. "You moved." That's good. We adjusted. Then there was breathing again. But it was not mine this time. It was too close to the microphone, too steady, too controlled. It sounded like someone breathing on purpose, slowly, carefully, so I would have to listen to every second of it. Then my voice came back, only it was wrong now. It sounded like my voice was being shaped while it spoke, like something was trying to copy me in the middle of the sentence and getting better with every word. "You're writing this down now," it said. "That means you still think you can leave before midnight." I stopped the recording immediately. I remember staring at the recorder like it had bitten me, because I was not writing anything when I heard that. Not then, but I am now. And the recorder is on my desk again. I did not move it there. After hearing that third recording, I sat completely still for almost an hour. I kept waiting for something else to happen. The apartment made its usual night sounds. Pipes creaked in the walls. The refrigerator clicked and hummed. Somewhere above me, a neighbor's footsteps crossed the floor and faded away. But under all of that, I thought I could hear something else. A low hum, almost too quiet to notice. It sounded like a wire vibrating inside the walls. Or maybe it was just my pulse pounding in my ears. I kept telling myself that. I kept telling myself I was scared and my brain was turning normal sounds into threats. Around 10 at night, I decided to test the recorder. I picked it up from the coffee table and carried it into the kitchen. I opened the microwave and placed the recorder inside. I did not turn the microwave on. I was not brave enough for that. Something about destroying it felt dangerous, but I wanted to see if it could still move while I watched it. I closed the microwave door and sat down on the couch with a clear view of the kitchen. I stared at it for 17 minutes. Nothing happened. The recorder stayed inside the microwave. The door stayed shut. The apartment stayed quiet. Then, at 10:17, I blinked. That was all. One blink. When my eyes opened again, the microwave door was open. The recorder was back on the kitchen counter. Its small red light was blinking softly. I did not play it right away. I could not. I walked to the stove and made tea instead, which is strange because I never make tea. I do not even really like tea. But I needed something to do with my hands. I needed a reason not to press play. I boiled water. I dropped a tea bag into a mug. I stood there watching the water turn brown, trying not to look at the recorder beside me. At 11:03, I gave in. I pressed play. The fourth recording started with static, not normal static, not the kind that sounds like radio noise. This had a rhythm to it. It pulsed and broke apart like words were trying to form, then being erased before they could become language. Then my voice came through. This time there were two versions of it. Both were mine, but one spoke slightly behind the other, like a bad echo. "You think the apartment is the cage," the voices said. "It's not. The cage is the time between when you fall asleep and when you wake up. We've been living there. You just never noticed." There was a pause. Then, softer, my voice said, "Don't check your bedroom closet." I did not want to check it. I swear I did not. But my feet moved before I made the choice. I stood up from the couch and walked down the short hallway toward my bedroom. Every step felt slow and heavy. The apartment seemed colder near the bedroom door. I pushed it open. My bedroom was dark, except for the light spilling in from the hallway. The bed was still unmade from the last time I had slept there. The blanket was twisted near the foot of the mattress. A shirt was on the floor. Everything looked normal, except the closet door. It was open about 2 inches. That door is never open. I keep it shut because there is nothing interesting inside, just winter coats, a vacuum cleaner, old shoes, and a few boxes I have not touched in years. I stood there, staring at that thin black gap. Then, I pushed the door open the rest of the way. The coats had been rearranged, not thrown around, not ripped down. Rearranged. One sleeve of my winter parka had been tied in a loose knot around the vacuum hose. The hangers were turned at strange angles, like someone had been standing in there with plenty of time, calmly moving things into place. Then I saw the wall behind the coats. There was writing in the dust. Large capital letters had been dragged across the dusty surface, wide enough that I had to step back to read the whole message. "You sleep here. We watch. Tonight is different." I backed out of the room so fast I hit my shoulder on the doorframe. I closed the closet. Then I closed the bedroom door. Then I moved a chair in front of it, even though I knew that would not help. It is 11:47 now. The recorder is on my desk again, even though I put it in the bathroom sink and placed a cooking pot over it. I do not know how it keeps getting out. My phone says midnight is 13 minutes away. I have been writing this whole thing in a notes app, trying to get it all down before whatever happens next. At first, typing made me feel better. It made the fear feel organized. If I could explain everything in order, maybe it would become less impossible. But now, I am looking at the screen, and I have realized something. I am not typing anymore. These sentences are still appearing, not deleted, not changed, just added. one line after another. The latest one appeared a few seconds ago. You were right not to check the closet a second time. But we're not in the closet anymore. I am not going to turn around. I am sitting at my desk, facing the screen, and I am going to keep looking at it until midnight. That is the deal, isn't it? That is what the recording meant when it said I still thought I could leave before midnight. It did not mean leave the apartment. It meant leave the story. Stop writing. Look away. Pretend this is fiction. Pretend I can close the app, put the phone down, and return to a normal life where old recorders do not predict what you are about to do. But I cannot close it. Every time I try, a new line appears. The latest one says, 7 minutes. Don't blink again. I do not know who we are. I do not know where they came from. I do not know why they need me asleep. But I know one thing now. They are not in the recorder. The recorder is only how they speak. The recordings are not warnings. They are not predictions. They are proof that whatever is happening has already happened somewhere else. Maybe in the time between sleep and waking. Maybe in the place where dreams should be. Maybe in some thin little space I have been entering every night without knowing it. When I played the fourth recording again just now, I heard something I missed before, after the breathing stopped, and after the wrong version of my voice faded away, there was a whisper at the very end. It was so quiet I had to put in headphones to hear it. The whisper said, "Midnight is just when we start talking back. The cursor is blinking. I am not moving my hands. 4 minutes. The closet door behind me just creaked. I am not going to check. I am not going to stop writing. That is the only rule I have left." Another line just appeared on the screen. You keep calling it a closet because that makes it easier. I can feel something behind me now. Not touching me. Not yet. But the air has changed. The room feels crowded, like too many people are standing in a small space and trying not to breathe too loudly. The recorder is clicking on its own. I can hear the tape turning. I have not pressed play. 3 minutes. There is a sound behind me like fingernails lightly tapping wood. Slow taps. Careful taps. Not on the closet door anymore. Closer than that. The desk is shaking. No, not the desk. My hands. Except I am still not typing. The words are still appearing. We learned your voice first. Then your breathing. Then your fear. I want to scream. But I am afraid that if I open my mouth, the sound that comes out will not be mine. 2 minutes. The recorder just spoke. Not through the speaker. From inside the room. My voice said, "If you're hearing this early, don't go to sleep in that room again." Then another voice, also mine, answered from somewhere behind my chair. "You moved. That's good. We adjusted. I am crying now. I can feel it on my face. I cannot wipe my eyes because I do not want to move my hands. I do not want to look away from the screen. The latest line says, 'You can blink now. We are already here.' I am not going to. 1 minute. The light above my desk is flickering. The shadows on the wall are changing shape. They are stretching toward me, long and thin, like hands reaching from the corners. The recorder clicked again. A new recording is playing. It is me. Sleeping, but I am awake. I am awake. I am awake. 30 seconds. The closet door is fully open now. I did not see it open, but I can feel the dark space behind me. I can feel it like cold breath on the back of my neck. The screen just added another sentence. "You were never writing to warn them. I do not understand." Another sentence. "You were writing to let us out. No, 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 no. The app will not close. The phone will not turn off." I held the power button and nothing happened. The cursor keeps blinking, and every blink feels like something opening and closing inside the walls. 10 seconds. The recorder is beside my ear now. I do not know how it got there. The voice coming from it is mine, but older somehow. Tired. Far away. It says, midnight. The clock changed. 12:00. Everything went silent. For 1 second, I thought it was over. Then the screen filled with one final line. Now we talk back. Something behind me started breathing in my voice. Story 3. I do not want to share too many personal details, because I am already scared enough as it is. I do not want anyone finding me, and I do not want people I know reading this and realizing it is about me. But something has been happening in my apartment, and I am honestly starting to feel like I am losing control of my life. This is the only place I could think of where someone might actually take me seriously, or at least listen without laughing. Before I explain anything, I need to say this clearly. I am not crazy. I have never taken drugs. I have never been diagnosed with any mental illness. I do not see things that are not there. I do not hear voices. I do not have a history of making up stories for attention. I live a quiet, boring life, and until this started, the scariest thing in my apartment was the amount of laundry I kept avoiding. But now, I am scared to sleep. The days have started blending together because I am exhausted all the time. I think I first noticed it about a week ago. I was lying in bed late at night, watching TV before going to sleep. My room was dark except for the pale light from the screen, and I was in that lazy, half-tired state where you know you should turn everything off, but you keep watching anyway. That was when I noticed my closet door. It was slightly open, not wide open, not enough for someone to step out, just a small gap. But it caught my eye right away, because I never leave my closet door open. I know that sounds childish, but I have watched too many scary movies since I was a kid. Closet doors, dark hallways, basements, bathroom mirrors, all of it got into my head when I was younger. Even as an adult, I still have habits because of that. I check the locks twice. I close the closet before bed. I do not like sleeping with dark spaces open in the room, so when I saw the gap, I assumed I must have forgotten to close it properly. I was annoyed with myself more than scared at first. I got out of bed and walked over to shut it. As I got close, I saw something move inside. It happened so fast that my brain almost refused to understand it. Through the narrow gap in the door, I saw an eye pull back into the darkness. Just one eye. It was there for less than a second, but I saw it. Pale, wet, and wide. It moved backward like something inside the closet had been leaning close, watching me through the crack, and then realized I had seen it. I froze. My hand was already reaching for the door. For a second, I could not move at all. Then I slammed the closet shut so hard the door rattled in the frame. I stood there breathing too fast, waiting for something to hit the other side. Nothing happened. After a while, I forced myself to step back. I told myself I was tired. I told myself it was late. I told myself the TV light had reflected off a hanger or a button or something shiny in the closet. I repeated every normal explanation I could think of until my heart slowed down enough for me to get back into bed. I did not sleep much that night, but I did eventually drift off. The next morning, everything felt stupid in daylight. The closet looked normal. My apartment looked normal. Nothing was out of place. I opened the closet and checked inside. Clothes, shoes, a few boxes, old bags I never use. Nothing else. No hidden crawl space. No loose panel. No way for anyone to hide in there without me seeing them. I live alone in a tiny studio apartment. There is only one main room, a small bathroom, a little kitchen area, and that closet. I do not have roommates. Nobody has a spare key except the landlord, and I have never had any reason to think he is weird. The front door has a deadbolt and a chain lock. The windows are locked. There is no balcony. I am not on the ground floor, so I decided it had been my imagination. I wanted that to be true so badly. After that first night, I became very careful with the closet. Before bed, I made sure the door was fully closed. I pushed it until I heard the latch click. Sometimes I pulled on the handle afterward just to make sure it had caught properly. I even started placing a shoe in front of it, thinking that if it opened, the shoe would move, and I would know for sure. A couple of days later, I was getting ready for bed. I remember closing the closet door before going to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I remember it clearly, because by then the whole thing had already made me nervous. I pushed the door shut, checked the latch, and looked at it for a few extra seconds before leaving the room. I was only gone for a few minutes. When I came back, I climbed into bed and started looking at my phone. I was trying to act normal, scrolling through random posts, anything to keep my mind busy. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed the closet again. The door was open. Not all the way, just slightly, maybe 2 inches. But it had been closed. I know it had been closed. My stomach dropped. I stared at it, waiting for something to happen. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional sound of a car passing outside. The shoe I had placed in front of the door was still there, but it had shifted a little, like the door had pushed it aside. I did not get up to close it. I wanted to, but my body would not listen. I just sat there in bed, frozen, phone still glowing in my hand. The gap looked like a black line cut into the room. I could not see anything inside, but I felt watched. That is the only way I can describe it. The feeling was heavy and direct, like someone was standing in the dark, staring straight at me. After a while, I rolled over so my back faced the closet. That somehow felt worse, but I could not keep looking at it. I pulled the blanket up to my shoulders and tried to sleep. I did not sleep. Hours seemed to pass. Every small sound made my whole body tense. The building pipes clicked. The fridge buzzed. Someone in another apartment closed a door. At one point, I thought I heard the softest creak behind me, but I told myself it was the bed frame or the floor. Eventually, I could not take it anymore. I slowly rolled onto my back and looked at the closet. The door was open wider now. My entire body locked up. Moonlight came through the window just enough to touch the closet door. Something inside the gap reflected that light. I could not tell what it was. Maybe an eye again. Maybe teeth. Maybe just a hanger catching the light. The shadows were too thick for me to understand what I was seeing, but I knew something was there. It did not move this time. It just stayed in the gap, low and still, like it was waiting. I stayed frozen for the rest of the night. I kept thinking that if I moved, even a little, whatever was inside would rush out and grab me. I imagined long hands wrapping around my ankles and dragging me across the floor. I imagined being pulled into the closet, into that small, dark space where there should not have been room for anything at all. I do not know if I slept or just blacked out from fear and exhaustion. One moment I was staring at the closet in the dark. The next, sunlight was coming through the window. The closet door was still open, but whatever I had seen was gone. Every part of me screamed not to go near it, but daylight made me feel just brave enough to move. I jumped out of bed and ran to the front door, where I keep a baseball bat. I grabbed it with both hands and spun around, expecting to see something behind me. The apartment was empty. Slowly, I walked back toward the closet. My hands were sweaty on the bat. I could hear my own breathing. I stood in front of the door for a few seconds, then grabbed the handle and threw it open. Nothing. Just my clothes hanging there. Boxes on the floor, shoes, a folded blanket on the upper shelf. Everything exactly where it should have been. I moved the boxes around with the bat. I checked behind my hanging clothes. I looked up at the shelf. I even tapped the walls, thinking maybe there was some hidden opening I had never noticed. There was nothing. I spent the rest of that day trying to convince myself there had to be a normal answer. Maybe the latch was weak. Maybe the building shifted at night and the door opened on its own. Maybe I had dreamed part of it. Maybe I had woken up during sleep paralysis and my brain had turned shadows into something worse. I wanted to believe any of that, but last night, it got worse. A lot worse. The night started the same as the others. I got ready for bed, checked the front door, checked the window, and then stood in front of the closet for a long time. I closed it carefully. I pressed the latch until it clicked. Then I pulled on the handle. It did not move. I put a heavy laundry basket in front of it this time instead of a shoe. Then I got into bed with my back facing the closet because I could not stand looking at it anymore. I kept the TV on low for a while, but eventually I turned it off. I was so tired that I thought maybe my body would force me to sleep no matter how scared I was. And for a while, it did. I fell into the kind of restless sleep where you wake up every few minutes and never feel fully gone. Then, I woke up in the middle of the night. I was drenched in sweat. I do not remember hearing anything. I do not remember a dream. I just woke up with my heart racing, already terrified, like some part of me knew danger was close before my eyes opened. I rolled onto my back and looked at the closet. Something was coming out. I swear it had been moving before I looked. The moment my eyes landed on it, it stopped. The closet door was open about a foot. The laundry basket had been pushed aside. From the dark gap near the floor, a hand was reaching out. At least, it looked like a hand. The skin was pale, almost gray in the moonlight. The fingers were far too long, thin, crooked, and stretched in a way that made them look wrong. The nails were dark and sharp, not like claws exactly, but long enough to scrape against the floorboards. One finger was bent backward at an angle that should have been broken. The hand was flat against the floor, like whatever it belonged to had been dragging itself forward, toward my bed. I could see part of a wrist behind it, narrow and sickly, disappearing into the blackness of the closet. I could not scream. I could not move. I could barely breathe. The feeling of being watched became so strong it felt physical, like pressure against my face. I knew, somehow, that the thing was looking at me from inside the dark. I could not see its face, but I could feel its attention. It knew I was awake. It knew I had seen it. And it stopped. That was almost worse than if it had kept moving. It was like the thing understood the rules, like it only came closer when I was asleep. And if I woke up, It had to freeze and wait. I stared at that hand for the rest of the night. Every time my eyes burned and started to close, panic forced them open again. I was sure that if I blinked too long, it would rush across the room. I pictured it crawling fast, all elbows and knees and long fingers, pulling itself over the floor until it reached the bed. But it did not move while I watched. Not once. As the hours passed, the hand seemed to slowly fade back into the darkness. Or maybe my eyes were too tired to see it clearly. By the time the first light of morning came through the window, the closet looked empty again. The door was still open, but the hand was gone. I did not go to work today. I called in sick. I could barely speak on the phone. My voice sounded strange even to me. I spent the morning checking every inch of the apartment. I opened the closet again with the baseball bat raised. Nothing was inside. No hand. No marks on the floor. No holes in the wall. No crawl space. No secret door. The laundry basket was still pushed aside, though. I know I had placed it directly in front of the closet before bed. I checked the front door. Locked. Chain still in place. Window locked. Bathroom empty. Under the bed empty. Kitchen cabinets empty. I even looked behind the fridge like an idiot because I was so desperate to find an explanation. There was nothing. Now I am sitting here writing this because I do not know what else to do. I am exhausted from not sleeping. My heart starts racing every time I look at the closet. I keep hearing small sounds and turning around too fast. I keep imagining that pale hand sliding out again, fingers stretching over the floor, nails dragging quietly as it pulls itself closer. I do not know anything about spirits or creatures. I do not know if this is a haunting, a demon, some kind of thing that lives in dark spaces, or something even worse. I only know that it feels like it is getting braver. The first time, it only watched me through the crack. Then it opened the door wider. Then it reached out. Last night, it was already on the floor, dragging itself toward my bed. What happens tonight? That is the question I cannot stop asking. If I had not woken up last night, how close would it have gotten? Would it have stood beside my bed? Would it have touched me? Would it have pulled me out from under the blankets and dragged me into the closet? I keep staring at that small, dark space and thinking it should not be possible. Nothing could fit in there. Nothing could hide inside without me seeing it. But something is there, or something is using it. I am afraid to leave the apartment, because what if it comes out while I am gone? What if I come back and the closet is wide open? What if it is waiting somewhere else by then? But I am also afraid to stay here. I do not have family nearby. I do not want to call the police and tell them there is a monster in my closet. I know how that sounds. I thought about sleeping at a hotel, but I am scared that whatever this is will follow me. I thought about blocking the closet door with furniture, but part of me is terrified that I will wake up and find everything moved aside. I thought about taking the closet door off completely, but I do not know if that would make it better or worse. Because what if the door is the only thing slowing it down? I do not want to sleep tonight. I am scared that if I close my eyes, I will wake up to those long fingers touching the edge of my bed, or worse, I will not wake up at all. Please, if anyone has experienced anything like this, tell me what to do. Tell me how to make it stop. Tell me how to keep it inside the closet, because it is getting closer. And I do not think it is going to wait much longer. Story 4. The first person I met on the trail did not seem that strange at first. Not really. He looked rough, but hikers can look rough after a long day outside. His face was dirty, his flannel shirt was ripped at the elbow, and he was missing one boot. That was the only thing that really stood out to me. He did not look me in the eyes when I asked if he was okay. Instead, he stopped in the middle of the path, kept his head lowered, and asked how much farther to the trailhead. I told him it was still a little ways down and stepped aside so he could pass. He nodded once and kept walking. For a few minutes, I did not think much of it. I figured he had been camping somewhere along the ridge and had a bad night. Maybe he had lost his boot in the mud. Maybe he had torn his shirt climbing over rocks. People do stupid things outdoors all the time. Then, I remembered something that made me slow down. My truck had been the only vehicle in the parking lot. He could have started from the other end of the loop, I guess, but that did not feel likely. The trail was well used and clearly marked, but it was still a long route. Most people parked where I had parked. Still, I told myself it was none of my business and kept moving. Getting to the top was the only thing that mattered. The lookout at Delta Ridge was beautiful in early fall, and I had been trying to get pictures from there for weeks. The northeastern face of the ridge was mostly cliff. It dropped almost 200 meters down to the highway below. More than one person had fallen there over the years, so I knew to be careful. About 20 minutes after I passed the man with one boot, I saw movement in the trees near a rocky outcrop. "Hello?" A woman's voice called through the trees. I stopped. "Hi, are you okay? Have you seen my dog?" she asked. "He was just with me a few seconds ago, and now I can't find him." She stepped out from behind the rocks so suddenly that I almost jumped. Her eyes were wide and desperate. She looked scared enough that my first thought was not about how strange she looked, but about helping her. Then I noticed what she was wearing. It was too cold for her clothes. She had on running shoes, leggings, a sports bra, and a hoodie tied around her waist. The wind was sharp up there, and I had a jacket on. She should have been freezing. "Please help me look," she said. "Okay," I said. "Where did you see him last?" "Over here. Come on." She waved for me to follow her, then disappeared behind the rocks again. Her curly brown hair bounced as she moved, barely held back by a loose scrunchie that looked like it was about to fall out. I jogged around the other side of the outcrop. Nobody was there. I stopped and looked around. "Hello?" No answer. I called out again, louder this time. Still nothing. There was a narrow game trail behind the rocks, leading into thick brush. I checked it for footprints, movement, broken branches, anything. I saw no sign of the woman, no sign of a dog either. For a moment, I thought about turning back. I should have, but the lookout point was close, and if I went home without pictures, I would have to wait until next year for the same colors and the same clear view. That was what I told myself anyway. At the time, continuing felt reasonable. Strange people on trails were not unheard of. Maybe she had gone down the game trail and I had simply missed her. So I kept going. As I got closer to the clearing, I slowed down. I walked carefully in the middle of the path, avoiding dry leaves, loose rocks, and fallen branches. It was an old habit from years of hiking. If you step carefully, you can move almost silently. The trees thinned ahead of me, and the cliff edge came into view. Someone was already standing there. He was close to the drop, facing outward. He held an old camera with a large zoom lens and seemed to be lining up a shot. I stopped back from him, partly because of trail manners, and partly because standing too close to the cliff made me nervous. If someone is taking pictures, you wait your turn. But this man looked wrong too. He was wearing a fedora and a black trench coat, like someone from an old movie. On his feet were overshoes, the kind I had not seen anyone wear in decades. His clothes were too formal for the trail and too old-fashioned for the year. I stood there for a while, waiting. He did not take the picture. He did not move much at all. Finally, my patience ran out. "Did you get it?" I called. "You bet," he said. His voice sounded cheerful, almost proud. He turned partway toward me and waved me forward. I took a few steps, then stopped. "How did you get up here?" I asked. "I didn't see your car." He gave a little laugh. "The wife came and took my car after I walked up," he said. "She drove right by me on the highway and didn't even wave. Are you coming, or what?" It's a beautiful, clear day. I took another step or two, just enough for the cliff to open up in front of me. The drop was right there, too close. The highway below looked tiny. "Right here," he said, pointing to the ground beside him. "Best spot." The rock jutted out slightly where he pointed. It was exactly the kind of place a person might stand for a perfect photo. It was also exactly the kind of place where one bad step could kill you. "I think I'll wait until you're done," I said. "Take your time. I'm going to have some water." "Suit yourself, kid," he said. I stepped back and opened my water bottle, but I did not drink much. I watched him over the rim. He lowered his camera and stood there facing the cliff. Not taking pictures, not leaving, just standing. The longer I stayed, the stranger everything felt. The missing boot. The woman with the dog who vanished. This man in his old clothes at the edge of a cliff asking me to come closer. My stomach tightened. "You know," I said. Trying to sound casual, "I think maybe I'll just start back." He did not turn around. Seems kind of pointless to come all the way up here and not get some pictures. "I'm mainly in it for the exercise," I said. I had already taken a step back when he suddenly shouted, "Wait." I froze. "What?" I asked. "You got a telephone?" The word sounded strange, not phone. "Telephone, yeah," I said. "Okay," he replied. "When you get home, look in the directory. My name is Bill. Number's under William Johnson. Can you call my wife and tell her to get back out here? I'm ready to go." My mouth felt dry. "No problem," I said. "I'll call as soon as I get there." "Thanks," he said. "Leave her yours, and I'll call you back when I get these developed. I'll send you some copies." Developed. That word hit me harder than it should have. People do still develop film, sure, but not many. Not like that. Not spoken so naturally. "Will do," I said. I turned and walked away. For the first few steps, I forced myself not to run. Then I broke into a sprint. Branches whipped past me. My boots slid on dirt and leaves. I did not look back. I kept running until my lungs burned and my legs felt weak. By the time I reached my truck, I was almost hyperventilating. I climbed inside, locked the doors, and pulled out my phone. I tried to open a browser, but there was no service. Of course there wasn't. Not out there. So I drove home too fast, checking the rearview mirror more than the road. The whole way back, I kept thinking about the first man. The missing boot. The woman searching for her dog. Bill with his old camera. When I got home, I cracked open a beer, sat at my desk, and typed deaths in Longview Township near Delta Ridge into Google. There were more results than I expected. At first, the results did not mean anything to me. Old accident reports, local history pages, a few mentions of hiking injuries. Then a headline from the local paper appeared. It was dated October 5th, 1974. He will be missed. Beloved journalist William Johnson dies in tragic fall. My heart started pounding. I clicked into the newspaper archive and searched again. The article said William Johnson, a local journalist and photographer, had fallen from Delta Ridge while taking pictures. His wife had reportedly been waiting for him at home. He had gone up alone with his camera and never came back. The photo in the archive was grainy, but it was him. The fedora, the coat, the face, Bill. I sat back from the screen and stared at the wall for a while. Then I searched again. Longview Township missing hiker 1 boot. That brought up another article. It was from August 2009. Search still on for missing Clear Lake resident. The article said a man had disappeared while hiking near Delta Ridge. Search crews looked for him for months, but they never found him. His family said he had gone out for a day hike and never returned. The picture showed the first man I had passed on the trail. Same dirty face, same flannel shirt. I felt cold all over. Then I searched Woman Dog Delta Ridge. Only one article came up. It was from 1998. Tragedy at Delta Ridge as woman falls to her death. The article said a woman had fallen from the cliff while hiking with her dog. Her body was found near the highway below. Her dog was found alive nearby, scared but unharmed. The picture showed a smiling woman with curly brown hair. I closed the browser for a few minutes. Then, for some reason I still cannot fully explain, I searched for William Johnson's phone number. Maybe it was the beer. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe some part of me needed to prove that what I had seen was impossible. I found a number listed in an old directory archive. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called. The phone rang 6 times before someone answered. Hello? The voice was old, very old. Mrs. Johnson? I asked. Yes, who is this? I gave her my name. I told her I had been hiking around Delta Ridge. I told her I had met someone up there. She cut me off before I could finish. It's been 50 years, she said. You people need to let it go. My hand tightened around the phone. He said he was ready to come home, Mrs. Johnson. There was silence on the line. For a moment I thought she had hung up. Then she said, very quietly, he can stay there. And then the line went dead. Story 5. If you are camping in Baxter State Park and you see trees marked with red paint, pack your things and leave before it is too late. I want to say first that I am not the kind of person who believes in monsters, forest spirits, cryptids, or anything supernatural. I have always been the person who looks for the logical answer first. Strange noise in the woods? Probably an animal. Weird mark on a tree? Probably paint from workers. Something moving outside the tent at night? Wind, rain, branches, or a raccoon looking for food. That was how I used to think. Now I do not know what to believe. I want there to be a normal explanation for what happened to me and my friend Aaron. I want someone to tell me it was a bear, or a sinkhole, or some hidden trail we did not notice. I want a park ranger or a police officer to sit me down and explain it in a way that makes sense. But no one has done that. No one can. I have been camping since I was a kid. I know the outdoors. I know how forests sound at night. I know the difference between an animal moving through brush and a tree cracking in the wind. I know how easy it is for your mind to scare you when you are alone in the dark. I also know that what happened in Baxter State Park was not normal. And because of it, I do not think I will ever be brave enough to go deep into the wilderness again. Aaron and I had planned the trip for weeks. We were going to stay 5 nights in Baxter State Park in Maine. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip, hiking during the day, fishing in the evenings, sitting by the fire at night, then sleeping under the trees like we had done so many times before. Aaron was just as experienced as I was, maybe more. He had camped in those woods before and knew the area better than me. So when he picked a camping spot far away from any main trail, I trusted him. That was normal for us. We liked quiet places. We liked being away from other people. The spot he chose was in a small open field surrounded by thick forest. It was not a real campground. There were no benches, no fire rings, no marked tent pads, nothing like that. Just a flat open space with enough room for 2 tents and our gear. About 30 yards south of the field, there was a tree marked with red spray paint. The paint was bright. It stood out clearly against the bark. It looked fresh enough that we could see it from a distance. Aaron said it would make a good landmark. Since we planned to leave camp every day and go hiking or fishing, the red paint would help us find our way back. At the time, that made sense. I did not question it. I wish I had. The first night was completely normal. We set up camp, organized our gear, and hiked out to a fishing spot Aaron knew. We did not catch much, but we did not care. The weather was good, the woods were peaceful, and the whole trip felt like exactly what we needed. We headed back to camp around sunset. I clearly remember passing the tree with red paint on the way back. It was right where it had been before. The mark looked like a rough red slash across the trunk. I remember thinking it was useful, even comforting, because the light was fading, and it helped confirm we were going the right way. That was the last normal moment I had in that forest. Later that night, I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought a tree was falling. If you have ever heard a large tree start to give way, you know the sound. It begins with a deep cracking noise like bones snapping under pressure. Then comes the heavy creaking of the trunk bending. Branches break, wood splits. Everything around it rustles as the tree comes down. That was exactly what I heard. Crack, creak, snap, a deep, loud tearing sound rolled through the forest. I lay there in my sleeping bag, half awake, waiting for the crash. But the crash never came. There was no heavy thud, no shaking ground, no final impact. It sounded like a tree had been ripped apart in the dark, but it never hit the ground. I listened harder. The forest was still moving. The sounds were quieter now, but I could still hear branches cracking and leaves shaking. It was not one sound anymore. It was spread out, like something was moving through the trees, disturbing everything around it. I was still half asleep, so I told myself it was probably a large animal. Maybe a moose. Maybe a bear. Something big enough to break branches and move through the woods loudly. That explanation worked well enough for me to go back to sleep. In the morning, Aaron and I got up early. While we packed our day bags for another hike, I glanced toward the forest where I thought I had heard the noise. I looked for any fallen trees, broken branches, fresh damage. Anything? I saw nothing. No tree on the ground, no cracked trunk, no sign that anything large had fallen during the night. I did not bring it up at first. I did not want to sound paranoid. We continued with the day like normal. We hiked for a few hours, checked out another spot near the water, and eventually decided to head back early so we could make dinner before dark. That was when we noticed the tree with red paint was gone. At first, it did not feel like a big deal. Maybe we had come back from a slightly different angle. Maybe we had missed it. Maybe the light was hitting the trees differently. But Aaron stopped walking. He turned in a slow circle and frowned. "We should have passed it by now," he said. I looked around too. The forest looked the same in every direction. Tall trunks, moss, rocks, brush, and old fallen branches. But there was no red paint. We still managed to find camp from memory, but Aaron kept looking back over his shoulder. He was more bothered by the missing tree than I was. He kept saying the route he had taken should have brought us right past it. After we dropped our gear at camp, he walked back toward the spot where the tree should have been. I waited for a few minutes. When he came back, he looked confused. "It's not there," he said. I thought he must have missed it, so I went to check for myself. He had not missed it. The tree was gone. And I do not mean we could not find the paint. I mean the entire tree was gone. We were both sure we were standing in the exact area where it should have been. We both trusted our sense of direction. We had both seen it more than once. I remembered the sound from the night before, the cracking, the creaking, the tree that sounded like it had been falling but never hit the ground. For a moment, I thought maybe that had been the painted tree. Maybe it had fallen somewhere nearby. But when we searched the area, there was no fallen tree, no fresh stump, no broken base, no big trunk lying in the brush. It was as if the tree had simply vanished. We were confused, but we did not keep looking for long. The sun was getting lower, and neither of us wanted to wander around too much before dark. We returned to the campsite, made dinner, and went to bed. That night, the sound woke me again. This time, it was louder. It sounded like the forest itself was moving. Branches snapped in the distance. Heavy wood cracked. The creaking was deep and painful, like a whole trunk was being twisted until it split. I lay awake, staring at the dark roof of my tent. Again, I told myself it had to be an animal. A bear, most likely. I considered waking Aaron and going to check, but the sound was far enough away that I convinced myself it was safer to stay in the tent. If it really was a bear, the last thing I wanted to do was walk toward it in the dark. So I stayed still. Eventually, the noise faded. In the morning, nothing around camp looked different. No fallen trees, no damage, no tracks that we could see. Aaron and I decided to hike to another fishing spot nearby. It was a nice day, and for a while I managed to push the weirdness out of my mind. The air was cool, the sky was clear, and the forest looked beautiful in that calm, quiet way that makes you forget how dark it gets at night. On our way back, we took the main trail. That was when we passed an older couple. They looked like typical campers. Good boots, clean packs, walking sticks, matching rain jackets tied around their waists. They saw our fishing gear and asked if we had caught anything. We stopped and talked for a few minutes. It was casual at first, just the normal kind of trail conversation. "Where are you camped? How long are you staying? Any good spots nearby?" Then the husband mentioned the trees. "Did you boys hear that last night?" he asked. Sounded like trees falling. Aaron and I looked at each other. I told him we had been hearing the same thing for multiple nights. The man frowned. He said it had been their first night in the park, and the sound had woken them both. His wife nodded and said it sounded close to their site. I asked if they found any fallen trees. They said no. Then I asked what direction the sound had come from. The man pointed toward the distant tree line. "Right over there," he said, "near that tree with red paint on it." The moment he said that, my stomach tightened. Aaron's face changed too. It was possible there were several trees marked with red paint in the area. Maybe park workers had marked them. Maybe there was maintenance happening. Maybe some trail crew had sprayed certain trees for removal. There were logical explanations, but neither of us felt better. The four of us decided to walk over and look. The couple wanted to check for the fallen tree, but I only cared about the red paint. When we got close, I asked the man where the marked tree was. He stopped and looked around. "It should be right here," he said slowly. "That's strange. Maybe I'm mistaken." His wife shook her head. "No," she said. "It was definitely here. I remember it. The red was bright. It was easy to see." Nobody spoke for a few seconds. What were the chances that two different groups had seen a tree with red paint, heard strange noises in the night, and then found the marked tree missing the next day? I tried to stay calm. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. But deep down, I was starting to feel like something was very wrong. After that, Aaron and I continued to the fishing spot, but we could not stop talking about the painted tree. Every time we tried to move on, one of us brought it up again. We went through every possible explanation we could think of. Maybe animals had rubbed the paint off. Maybe we were mistaken about the locations. Maybe someone was messing with campers. Maybe the paint was on a rock, not a tree. Maybe some trees had been cut down. None of those answers made sense. Still, we tried to enjoy the rest of the day. We did not want to let one strange thing ruin the trip. That night, the noise came again. Loud rustling, deep cracking, branches snapping like something huge was pushing through them. I woke up, listened for a while, then forced myself to ignore it. I was tired of being scared. I told myself I would not give the sound any more power than it already had. In the morning, Aaron and I decided not to hike. We stayed at camp to rest, eat, and clean up some gear. I remember feeling relieved. The open field felt safer than the trails. At least there, I could see the tree line around us. Around lunch, Aaron stood up and said he was going to take a piss. He walked toward the trees near the edge of camp, maybe 20 yards away. I want to be very clear about this part. He walked in the opposite direction from where we had first seen our painted tree. He was not going toward the original spot. He was not near where the red marked tree should have been. He was just going to pee near the tree line. I kept eating with my back turned to him. Then Aaron shouted, "I found the tree with red paint. It's over here." The second he said it, the forest began to rumble. It started as a low movement in the trees, then turned into the same violent cracking I had heard every night. Branches snapped. Wood creaked. Something massive shifted in the forest. It sounded like several trees were bending at once in heavy wind, except there was no wind. I turned around. I could not see Aaron. At first, I thought he had only stepped a few feet into the woods to get a better look. He had been close enough for me to hear him clearly. There was no way he could have gone far. "Aaron?" I called. No answer. The crashing grew louder for a few seconds. "Aaron?" Still nothing. That was when fear hit me. I thought maybe a bear had attacked him. Maybe that was the noise. Maybe the branches were breaking because something huge was moving between the trees. But I heard no scream, no cry for help, No running footsteps. Nothing from Aaron at all. Then, the loud cracking faded into distant rustling, like whatever had happened was moving away. I ran to where Aaron had been standing. He was gone. I searched the immediate area, calling his name again and again. My voice cracked. My heart was pounding so hard I felt sick. It did not make sense. He had been within earshot less than 30 seconds earlier. Now he was simply gone. I sprinted into the forest, following the fading sound of movement in the trees. But the woods were thick, and I could not move fast. Branches caught my clothes. Brush grabbed my legs. Rocks and roots forced me to slow down. The rustling grew farther away. Then it stopped. The forest went silent. I ran back to camp, still shouting Aaron's name. After that, I tried to search the exact place where I had last heard him. I thought maybe I could track him. Maybe he had tripped. Maybe something had dragged him. Maybe there would be footprints, broken branches, blood, anything. I found his canteen lying on the ground. I found the puddle where he had been peeing. I found his footprints. They went only a couple more feet into the trees. Then they stopped. Not faded, not lost in hard ground. Stopped, I circled the area again and again, but I could not find the tree with red paint. If Aaron had seen it while peeing, it should have been close. The paint was bright enough to spot easily. It could not have been far away. But there was no painted tree. No Aaron, no tracks, no sign of a struggle. Nothing. I called 911. I tried to sound calm, but I know I failed. I told them my friend had disappeared. I told them where we were. I told them he had been right next to camp and then suddenly gone. A search and rescue team arrived about 30 minutes later. I did not sleep for the next 72 hours. The search grew fast. Rangers, police, volunteers, dogs, helicopters, everyone. I gave them Aaron's description. I showed them where he had last been. I told them exactly what I heard before he disappeared. And even though I knew how insane it sounded, I told them about the tree. I told them about the red paint. I told them about our marked tree vanishing. I told them about the older couple seeing another one. I told them Aaron had shouted that he had found it before he disappeared. They listened politely, but I could tell they did not believe that part mattered. Under normal circumstances, I would not have believed it either. But something deep in me knew the tree was connected. Then, things got worse. The older couple we had spoken to on the trail were reported missing too. Police said they likely disappeared a few hours before Aaron. No one realized it right away because they were supposed to attend a guided hike that day. When they never showed up, someone reported it. They were gone. No signs, no bodies, no useful tracks. Nothing, as far as I know. They were the only other people who had mentioned a tree with red paint. Now they were missing too. After several days without sleep, I finally had to leave the campsite. I was shaking from exhaustion. I could barely stand. I packed my things and Aaron's things, though packing his gear felt wrong in a way I cannot explain. It felt like giving up, even though the search was still going. I got a motel room nearby so I could stay close to the forest while the search continued. As I write this, it has been just over a month since Aaron disappeared. The search team has found only one thing: one of Aaron's shoes. It was discovered about 15 miles from where he vanished. 15 miles. No one can explain how it got there. Nothing from the older couple has been found. I am still at the motel. I cannot bring myself to leave. Every day, I wait for a phone call. Every day, I hope someone found him. Every day, I think maybe this will be the day someone gives me an answer, but the phone does not ring. Aaron does not come back, and no answer comes. I am angry. I am broken. I am terrified. I keep replaying that moment in my head, his voice calling from the tree line, the forest rumbling right after, the way his footprints just stopped. None of it makes sense. I do not know what took him. I do not know where he is. I do not know if he is alive. But I know there is something dark in that forest. And I know that tree was part of it. Maybe it is not always in the same place. Maybe it moves. Maybe it marks people. Maybe it waits until someone notices it, and then the forest opens just long enough to take them. I do not know. All I can do is warn other people. If you are out in the woods and you see a tree with red paint, do not use it as a landmark. Do not walk toward it. Do not investigate it. Do not call your friend over to look at it. Turn around. Leave your gear if you have to. Go home. And if the trees start cracking behind you, do not look back. Story 6. This happened to me about 2 years ago, and even now I still think about it more than I should. I have tried to explain it in a normal way. I have tried to tell myself that my partner and I got confused, or that we took a wrong turn, or that we forgot the layout of a part of the city we thought we knew. But none of those explanations work. The street we found that day should not have existed, and after we left it, we were never able to find it again. At that time, I lived in a coastal city, though calling it a coastal city makes it sound nicer than it really was. The sea was there, yes, but not in the way people imagine when they hear those words. The beaches were far out on the edges, away from the main city, so they did not bring any beauty or freshness into daily life. The city itself was industrial, gray, and heavy. The heat there could be unbearable. The air often felt dirty, as if smoke and dust had settled into it permanently. It was not a tourist place. There were no beautiful old streets, no charming markets, no famous views, nothing that would make a stranger want to visit. It was the kind of city people lived in because they had to, not because they loved it. That afternoon, it was around 4 o'clock. I was walking with my partner through the city. We used to do that a lot. We liked walking with no real destination, just talking about our plans, our dreams, our frustrations, and everything we thought was wrong with the world. We were young, or at least we felt young in that way people do when life still seems like it might become something larger than it is. We bought 2 popsicles from a small shop because we were thirsty, then kept walking. The weather was strange that day. It was not hot, which was unusual. Instead, the air felt cool, but not in a pleasant way. A breeze moved through the streets and made the trees sway from side to side. The sky looked heavy, like a storm was coming, but there was no rain yet. The whole atmosphere felt pressed down, as if an invisible weight had settled over the city. I remember telling my partner that it felt like we were carrying stones on our backs. She laughed, but only a little, because she felt it too. We kept walking, talking, and looking at each other. We were so caught up in the conversation that we lost track of where we were. That happens sometimes. The city was familiar enough that we did not worry about it. We knew the main roads. We knew the neighborhoods nearby. We had both grown up around that area, so even if we wandered, we always found our way back. We reached Aventador Street at 45th and walked upward. The highway nearby was surprisingly empty. That was one of the first strange things, though we did not understand it at the time. It was one of the main highways in the city, and normally there were always cars passing by. Even on quiet days, there was noise. Engines, horns, motorcycles, trucks. That afternoon, there were only a few cars, and they seemed far away, almost unreal, like sounds coming from another room. We turned right and began walking up a steep street. At first, nothing seemed too unusual. It was just a street that climbed sharply, the kind of street that makes your legs burn if you walk too quickly. But as we continued, the city around us began to change. The houses became larger. The gardens became wider. Tall gates stood in front of beautiful homes with strong walls and expensive-looking facades. It was a wealthier area than the ones nearby, but that alone was not impossible. Every city has places that feel separate from the rest. The trees were what made us slow down. They were enormous. I had never seen trees that large inside that city before. Their trunks were thick, and their branches stretched across the street from both sides, meeting overhead. Their leaves were so dense that the sunlight could not fully pass through them. The street became darker beneath them, cooler too. It felt less like walking through a city and more like walking through a forest that had grown around houses. My partner checked her phone. It was 4:15 p.m. That confused us. We had only been walking for about 15 minutes since buying the popsicles, but it felt much longer. Not just a little longer. It felt like we had been walking for an hour, maybe more. My legs felt tired in a way they should not have. The conversation between us had changed too. We were still talking, but our voices were softer now, as if we did not want to disturb the street. From the moment we entered that road, we did not see another person. No one walking a dog. No one watering a garden. No workers. No children. No cars leaving driveways. Nothing. The houses were beautiful, but they felt empty. Not abandoned, exactly. More like everyone inside had stepped away at the same moment and left the street waiting. We kept walking. After a while, we both started to feel different. I do not know how to explain it clearly. It was not just fear. In fact, at first, it was almost the opposite. We felt lighter, younger. I remember looking at my partner and thinking her face seemed brighter, as if some tiredness had disappeared from it. She told me later that she thought the same thing about me. It felt like the world behind us was becoming distant. The city, our problems, our families, our normal worries, all of it felt farther away with every step. We walked 2 more blocks uphill. The sounds of the city faded behind us. The highway noise disappeared completely. Even the wind changed. It no longer sounded like wind moving through dirty city trees. It sounded clean, soft, and open. Then the street leveled out. In front of us was an avenue we had never seen before. It was beautiful in a way that felt wrong. The road was smooth and wide, lined with palm trees on both sides. They were not like the ordinary palms you see planted carelessly in public spaces. These were perfect, tall, and bright, maybe 4 meters high or more. Arranged so neatly that it almost looked planned for a painting. The light there was different too. The whole street glowed in soft violet and gold, even though it should still have been afternoon. The houses were no longer just large. They were mansions. Behind high gates, we saw swimming pools, long driveways, polished cars, wide balconies, and gardens that looked too green for our city. Everything was clean, too clean. There was no trash in the gutters, no cracked pavement, no wires hanging low over the street, no loud music from houses, no barking dogs. no smell of fuel or smoke. It did not feel like our city anymore. My partner stopped and checked her phone again. It was 4:20 p.m. Only 5 minutes had passed since she checked it last. That was impossible. We had walked slowly uphill for what felt like a very long time. We had passed large houses, huge trees, and several blocks. The walk should have taken at least 30 minutes, maybe more. But the clock said only 5 minutes had passed. At the same time, the sky looked like evening. The sun was low, or maybe gone. The color above us had turned violet, deep and soft, like the sky after sunset. I remember looking up through the palm trees and feeling a chill move through me. Not from the weather, from the feeling that something had shifted while we were not paying attention. We should have turned back then. Instead, we continued. I think curiosity pulled us forward. Also, there was something peaceful about that street, something that made it hard to panic. My partner held my hand. We walked slowly, looking at everything. The mansions were silent. The luxury cars shone in driveways. The pools reflected the strange violet sky. Still, there was no one around. No residents, no guards, no gardeners, no cars passing, not even a bird sound. The farther we walked, the more I felt we had entered a place that was not meant to be found. Not hidden exactly, but separate. Like a room behind a wall that only opens when nobody is looking. At the end of the avenue, the street curved gently. There, standing near the corner, was an old man. He was dressed in old-fashioned clothing. Not costume clothing, but clothing that looked as if it belonged to another time. He wore a dark suit, a high-collared shirt, a bright green tie, and a bowler hat. He looked almost like an old English gentleman from a photograph. His posture was straight, and he stood with one hand resting lightly at his side. He saw us. Then he smiled. It was not a frightening smile at first. It was polite, calm, almost kind. He lifted one hand to the brim of his hat, tipped it toward us, and said, "Have a good trip, young people." His voice was clear, but soft. It carried through the empty street perfectly. We did not answer right away. I think we were both too surprised. We just crossed the street, and after a few steps, we turned back to look at him. He was gone. There was nowhere he could have gone. The street was open. The gates were closed. There were no nearby corners close enough for him to disappear behind in those few seconds. He had been an older man, and even if he had walked quickly, we would have seen him. But he had vanished completely. That was when the fear finally arrived. Not loud, not sudden. It came over us quietly, like cold water rising around our feet. The street was still there, but now it felt different. The beauty of it became frightening. The mansions no longer looked rich and peaceful. They looked sealed. The palm trees looked too still. The violet sky looked too close. I remember feeling, with complete certainty, that we would never see that place again. I do not know why I knew it. I just did. My partner felt it too. She squeezed my hand and said we should leave. Her voice sounded small. We turned and walked back the way we had come. At least, I think we did. The walk back felt strange. I remember passing the palm trees, then the large houses, then the enormous city trees again. But the order did not feel right. It was like moving through a dream after realizing it is a dream. The surroundings were familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. When we finally reached the main road again, the city noise came back, all at once. Cars, horns, people, engines. The heavy smell of the city. Everything returned so suddenly that I felt dizzy. My partner checked her phone. It was 7 p.m. Almost 3 hours had passed since we had started walking, and nearly 2 hours had passed since the last time she checked the time on that strange avenue. But to us, it did not feel like 3 hours. It felt like time had been stretched and folded around us. Some parts had lasted too long, other parts had vanished. We went home shaken. At first, we did not talk much. We were both trying to make sense of it. The next day, we went back. We found Aventador Street. We found 45th. We found the steep street with the enormous trees. Those places were real. They had always been real. But the avenue with the palm trees was gone. There was no turn where it should have been. No mansions, no swimming pools, no luxury cars, no perfect road glowing under a violet sky. We walked up and down the area again and again. We checked side streets. We tried different turns. We looked at maps. Nothing matched what we had seen. Over the next few weeks, we returned several times. Nothing. We asked friends. We asked family. We asked people who had lived nearby for years. We described the mansions, the palm trees, the old-fashioned man, the strange road at the top of the hill. Everyone told us the same thing. No street like that existed there. Some people laughed and said maybe we had wandered into a rich private neighborhood and forgotten where it was. Others said maybe we were confused because of the weather. But my partner and I knew what we had seen. We knew that area. We had lived near it. There was nowhere for that avenue to be. And the old man's words stayed with me. Have a good trip, young people. Not walk, not afternoon, trip. As if he knew we were passing through somewhere. As if he knew we had entered a place we were not supposed to understand. Since then, I have thought many times about what happened. Maybe we were transported somewhere else for a short time. Maybe we stepped through some invisible doorway without knowing it. Maybe there are places in the world that only appear under certain conditions. When the light, the weather, and the people walking are exactly right. Maybe that street belonged to another city, or another time, or something stranger than both. I do not know. What I do know is that before we entered that place, the world felt heavy. The air felt strange. Time began to slow. The city emptied around us. Then, for a little while, we walked through a street that should not exist, and when we left it, time returned all at once. My partner and I still talk about it sometimes. Not often, because even remembering it makes us uneasy. But when we do, we always agree on the same thing. We did not simply get lost. We were disconnected from everything. It felt as if we stepped through an invisible portal and only noticed it after we had already come out the other side. The worst part is not that we can never find the street again. The worst part is that sometimes, when the sky turns violet before a storm, I feel like that street is somewhere nearby, waiting for us to take the right turn again. Story 7. I was not foolish enough to think I could do a better job than trained search and rescue officers. If there was some trace of Thomas still out there, something the dogs could not smell, something the infrared helicopters could not see, something dozens of park rangers and military volunteers had all missed, then I did not really believe I had a good chance of finding it. But I believed one thing. They had searched logically, and if Thomas had walked into those woods for an illogical reason, then maybe logic was exactly what had failed them. If he had even gotten lost at all. That was the thought I could not let go of. The official search had started to wind down. The rangers were tired. The volunteers were exhausted. The storm had ruined almost every trace they had. Everyone was beginning to accept the truth that people always accept in these cases. After a certain point, the woods keep what they take. But I was not ready to accept that. Thomas was my best friend. So I went in after him. With every hour I spent walking deeper into the middle of nowhere, and every mile I put behind me, I became more certain that I was following the right path. I became more certain that Thomas had not simply gotten confused, panicked, and wandered off trail. I believed something had called him away. The searchers had only been given a few hours between the time I sounded the alarm and the storm that rolled through the area. But in those few hours, they found something strange. Thomas had been walking in a perfectly straight line. He had told me he was going on a short backpacking loop over the weekend. It was not supposed to be dangerous. It was the kind of trip he had taken before, the kind of trip both of us had taken since we were young. But when the rangers brought dogs in, the dogs were sure that Thomas had left the trail the moment it curved south. The trail bent. Thomas did not. He kept going straight northwest. The dogs followed his scent through brush, down slopes, and across uneven ground until they reached a small lake. For a while, everyone feared that was where the answers would be found. But just before the rain started washing everything away, the dog circled to the other side of the lake and picked up his scent again, still straight northwest, as if Thomas had swum across the lake in a perfect line so he would not lose his direction. That was the direction I was following now. The rangers had searched in a wide circle, about 10 miles in every direction from the spot where he vanished. That made sense if Thomas was lost. Lost people circle around, double back, follow ridges, follow streams, make bad choices, panic, and turn themselves around. But I was not assuming he was lost. I was assuming he had gone somewhere. And wherever that was, I was going there too. When I reached the lake, I did not swim through it. The searchers had left markers, and those markers let me keep my line without getting soaked and wasting energy. But once I moved beyond the lake, there was nothing to guide me except my compass, my GPS, and my own stubborn belief that I was right. So I kept going northwest, over boulders, down steep hills, through creeks and shallow branching rivers, through brush thick enough to tear at my clothes and skin. Every time I saw a broken stick, freshly turned leaves, or the faint shape of a footprint in soft dirt, hope rose in me again. I told myself Thomas was alive. I told myself I was following him. I told myself I would find him wherever he had gone. The deeper I moved into the woods, the older the land felt. That was true in most wild places in our state. Flat land gets used. Flat land becomes farms, roads, towns, stores, and neighborhoods. But the places with steep hills, caves, ravines, and hard ground are often left alone because they are harder to control. As the hills grew taller, the trees grew taller too. The woods changed around me. The honeysuckle and low brush from the easier plains disappeared. In their place were thick rhododendrons with waxy leaves, ferns, moss, and bamboo lining the shaded streams. The air smelled wetter there. Older, the ground seemed darker, softer, more alive. There were rattlesnakes and bears down there, animals that had been driven out of the farmland hours north. There were older reminders too, like honey locust trees with giant thorns. Those thorns had evolved to protect them from mammoths and ground sloths thousands of years ago, creatures that no longer walk the earth. But they still worked just fine against me. Every time I had to push through them, they slowed me down and tore at my clothes. The fear of snakes slowed me even more. I loved the woods enough to know they were not safe. That danger was part of what made them beautiful. Out there, something could be under any rock, behind any tree, or around any bend. The woods did not care who you were. They did not care if you were careful, kind, experienced, or desperate. If you made a mistake, the woods could kill you without meaning to. As I sweated through the brush, I found myself enjoying parts of the hike despite everything. It had been a long time since I had been that deep in real wilderness. I had missed it more than I knew. There were moments when sunlight moved through the leaves in soft patterns, when birds called from the high branches, and I almost slipped into peace. Then I would remember why I was there. Thomas's life might still be at stake. That thought would snap me back. I would lower my eyes to the ground, watching for snakes, thorns, poison ivy, and above all, tracks. But the farther I went, the less certain the signs became. The faint boot prints I thought I had seen started to vanish. I found myself staring at dents in mud, scratches in soil, and crushed leaves, trying to make them mean something. They could have been made by Thomas. They could have been made by deer, rain, falling branches, or nothing at all. But I wanted them to be signs so badly that I kept going. When the sun began to sink, I started looking for a place to camp. I wanted a clearing, or at least a flat spot. The woods did not give me either. They were thick, uneven, and unforgiving. Eventually, I settled for an old tree well. A large tree had fallen long ago, leaving torn roots and a shallow hole in the ground. I did not bother setting up my tent. I just pulled out my tarp, tied one end to the exposed roots, and staked the other end into the dirt. Normally, I sleep well in the wilderness. Better than I sleep at home, honestly. But that night, crammed into that shallow hole with roots and rocks pressing into my back and dark thoughts pressing into my mind, I barely slept at all. I could not toss and turn because there was no room to move, so my mind did all the moving instead. I kept thinking about what it would mean if I found Thomas. What state would he be in? Would he be hurt, starving, delirious? Would he even be alive? And if he was alive, what had he been looking for out there? Because this was not the first time Thomas had disappeared into these woods. I had heard the story dozens of times over the years. It happened shortly before we met. As we got older, his parents told it more lightly, the way people do when enough time has passed to soften a nightmare. They could laugh about it because Thomas had come home. Time had helped them forget how terrified they must have been. It had been the middle of summer, about a decade earlier, half our lifetime ago. Thomas and his family were camping in a park much farther north. It was a different park, yes, but the same forest, the same ancient stretch of wilderness. They were getting ready for a night of s'mores and scary stories around the fire when Thomas suddenly wandered away. His parents saw him walk slowly but purposefully into the trees. At first, they thought he just did not want to make the trip to the campground bathroom. But the minutes passed, and he did not come back. When they called the rangers, there was only so much anyone could do in the dark. They found Thomas by chance the next day. A farmer spotted him walking through a field 6 miles away. The man had to yell Thomas's name several times before he reacted. According to the farmer, Thomas was so exhausted and dehydrated that he looked almost like he was in a trance. After he recovered, his parents asked him again and again why he had gone into the woods. Thomas said he had seen a dog. He thought it was lost. He followed it because he was worried about it. But the dog kept running away from him, staying just out of reach. By the time Thomas gave up, he was completely lost. Even then, He was hard-headed enough to think that if he just kept walking, he would eventually find his way home. Before starting my search, I had dug up an old news article about that incident. It included an interview with the farmer who found him. I traced a line from the farmer's property back to the campground where Thomas and his family had been staying. If Thomas had walked in a straight line back then, he would have been heading south and slightly west, toward the oldest center of the national forest, toward the deep woods that had been spared logging even hundreds of years ago, true old-growth forest. This time, Thomas had vanished from a different place. His direction was straight northwest, but that line pointed toward the same ancient woods. I have always believed in supernatural things, even though I had never been lucky enough, or unlucky enough, to see proof for myself, and that coincidence was too strong for me to ignore. I became convinced that something had tried to call Thomas away all those years ago and failed. This time, maybe it had called him again, and maybe this time it had succeeded. The next morning, after that awful night in the tree well, I felt slow and stiff. Lack of sleep sat heavily behind my eyes. My legs were sore. My shoulders ached from the pack. I was no stranger to the woods, but it had been a long time since I had pushed myself like that. I had brought a satellite phone and a portable GPS. Thomas was supposed to have one or both of those things with him too, but if he did, he had not used them. I checked my GPS and saw that I had covered serious ground the day before. If I kept moving, even slowly, I could reach what should be the center of the forest well before nightfall. By mid-morning, I started noticing another change in the trees. They were huge now. Their trunks were wider. Their crowns reached higher. More sunlight came through the gaps between them, and that made the undergrowth even thicker. Vines and branches snagged my shoes, my pants, and my pack. Every step took effort. My arms felt heavy. My eyes wanted to close. But I kept watching for anything that might tell me I had reached the place Thomas had been called to. I was sure there would be something. There had to be. Whatever had drawn him out there had to be noticeable somehow. A strange clearing. A hidden waterfall. A massive cave. A stone formation. Something old and wrong. Something that felt like it belonged to another world. But I found nothing like that. Only woods. Beautiful woods. Ancient woods. But still just woods. After hours of hiking, I began to feel something ugly inside me. Jealousy, it makes no sense, I know that. Thomas was missing. He could have been hurt, dying, or already dead. But part of me was jealous that he had been called by something mysterious while I had not. I had grown up camping and hiking in these woods just like he had. I loved them. I respected them. I wanted to believe there was something deeper hidden inside them. But the woods had never called to me. They had called to Thomas. It was an irrational thought. A selfish thought, but exhaustion and fear do strange things to the mind. I started to feel like Thomas had been chosen for some dark, cosmic purpose, and I had been ignored. Then, I looked at my GPS again. I was in what should have been the center of the forest. If anything, I had passed it. That was when doubt started to creep in. Maybe I was being delusional. Maybe Thomas had simply gotten lost. Maybe he had died somewhere miles away while I chased patterns that did not exist. I stared into the forest, desperate for a sign. A clearing, an animal, a strange light. Anything. The afternoon sun made my tired eyes heavier. I was thinking about lying down for a short nap when I saw something ahead in the brush. A hand. It was wrapped around the side of a tree, thin, filthy, almost skeletal. For a moment I froze. Then I forced myself to look higher. Dark hair, tired eyes, a face that was almost familiar. Almost that scared me more than if I had not recognized him at all. It was Thomas, but he looked like the woods had eaten most of him and left only what they could not digest. His cheeks were sunken. His skin looked dry and leathery. His body was so thin that he seemed barely human. "Thomas?" I said. I meant it as a greeting, but it came out like a question. He did not say my name. He just watched me from behind the tree. The way he looked at me made my stomach twist. It was not the look of someone seeing his best friend after days lost in the wilderness. It was the look of an animal trying to decide if something was dangerous. "Thomas, it's me," I said. "I came to find you. I came to bring you back." He studied me for another long second. I wanted to step away. I wanted to run. Then he came out from behind the tree. I was shocked by how thin he was. Even under his dirty flannel and jeans, I could see that he was all joints and sharp angles. His wrists looked like sticks. His face was hollow. He seemed taller than I remembered, though maybe that was only because he had lost so much weight. Every instinct in me was screaming that something was wrong. But I walked to him anyway. And I hugged him. He felt like bone and tendon under fabric. For a second, he did not move. Then, slowly, his skeletal arms wrapped around me. I pulled back quickly. "Sorry," I said, suddenly embarrassed and shaken. "What am I doing? Here, let's get you water and food. I can call the rangers." I handed him my water bottle and pulled off my backpack. I reached for the pocket where I kept my satellite phone. The pocket was already open. The phone was gone. My camping knife had been in that pocket too. It was also gone. "What?" I whispered. Then I remembered Thomas's arms around me, around my pack. I pushed the thought away immediately. It was ridiculous. He was weak, starving, lost, probably half delirious. He was not stealing from me. But Thomas only stared at me. There was no warmth in his eyes, no recognition, no relief, not even confusion in the normal way. He had not spoken once. "My satellite phone was right here," I said, "in this pocket. Will you help me look?" He did not answer. He only nodded. Together we searched the brush on our hands and knees. I waited for him to say something. Anything. He did not. "Thomas," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle, "how are you doing? Did you drink any water?" The water bottle was sitting untouched on a small boulder nearby. I mostly asked because I needed him to answer me. He looked at me with feral eyes, assessing eyes. And suddenly I thought of all those stories people tell about things in the woods that look like people but are not people. Things that copy voices. Things that wear familiar faces. I tried to push the thought away, but it stuck to the inside of my skull. Finally, mercifully, he spoke. "I'm not supposed to drink the water." It was his voice. That helped. A little. I told myself he was delirious. "It's okay to drink this water," I said. "It's filtered." I picked up the bottle, opened it, and held it toward him. "Where am I?" he asked. "You got lost for a while," I said, "but I'm going to bring you home. First, you need to drink." He narrowed his eyes like he thought I was tricking him. Then he took the bottle and drank a few swallows. The water was cloudy with iodine and dirt, but after swallowing, he looked down at it with wonder. "That's amazing," he said. We sat down, and I explained that we would have to hike out because my satellite phone was gone. My normal phone would not get service, even if we got back to the trail parking lot. I told him I had extra food, and we could filter all the water we needed. I tried to get him to eat a protein bar. He said, "I'm not supposed to eat the food." I reassured him again and again. I took a bite myself to prove it was safe. Eventually, he grabbed it and ate like he had not eaten in years. That scared me too. I remembered learning about people who were rescued from starvation and died because they ate too much too quickly. So I told him that was enough for now. We searched once more for the satellite phone and the knife. Nothing, they were gone. So we started walking. Thomas kept up surprisingly well, better than I expected. I tried talking to him for a while, but he gave so little back that I gave up quickly. I decided I just needed to get him home. Once we were out, people more qualified than me could figure out what had happened and how to help him. We made it more than halfway back before the sun started getting low. I began searching for a place to camp, and this time I found one almost right away. It was a small clearing. I did not remember passing it on the way in, but I was too tired to care. When it came time to build a fire, Thomas took over with strange confidence. He moved like someone who knew exactly what he was doing, and I let him. Once the fire was burning, he looked at it and asked, "That'll keep the monsters away, right?" I told him it would. We split a dehydrated meal. I would have felt bad eating too much when he could only have a little. I talked to him about how much everyone missed him, how hard people had searched, how badly they wanted him home. He only nodded or made quiet sounds. It was like talking to a wall. I kept talking anyway because I could not stand the silence. I caught him up on small things too. It had been a few weeks since I had seen him even before he vanished. I told him about people we knew, plans we had made, things he had missed. He listened closely, too closely. He watched me in a way that reminded me of when we were young. Thomas and I had both been outcasts as kids. We were both slow to understand the little social rules that made other people comfortable. He had been worse than me in middle school. I used to catch him watching me, studying me as I started figuring out how to act around people. Then, in high school, he moved ahead of me. Social skill is not fixed. Some people catch up. Some people pass you. Thomas did. As we learned to drive and started thinking about college, I found myself studying him the way he had once studied me. By graduation, we had mostly figured things out together. We had learned how to behave around people. We had learned how to hide the strange parts of ourselves that made us stand out when we were younger. But when it was just the two of us, we could drop the act. We could be quiet and strange together, and it was comfortable. This was not comfortable. The way Thomas watched me now felt like he had gone backward, like he was that awkward middle school kid again, studying me because he did not know how to be human around me. That thought hurt. It made me feel guilty for being afraid of him. It made me feel guilty for the earlier jealousy too, for thinking he had been chosen by the woods for some grand mystery while I had been left behind. Looking at his skeletal frame, I felt stupid and ashamed. This was not a cosmic adventure. My friend was broken. When it was time to sleep, things became worse. I only had a one-person backpacking tent. We unzipped the sleeping bag and laid it flat to keep some of the cold from the ground away. Then we pulled a thermal foil blanket over both of us. It was a tight fit. I had slept close to Thomas before, at sleepovers when we were kids, on camping trips, on couches after parties. But never like this. His bony arm jabbed into my side. I felt like I could barely breathe without disturbing him. I was exhausted, but as the night grew darker, my thoughts returned to fear. I kept thinking about the backpack pocket, the open zipper, the missing satellite phone, the missing knife, and I could not stop thinking that this was not the Thomas I knew. When you know someone well, really well, you know things you do not even realize you know. The way they move, the rhythm of their voice, the way they walk, the way they breathe. As Thomas breathed beside me, I realized his breathing did not sound familiar at all. My mind drifted back to stories of mimics, monsters, and things wearing human shapes. I decided I would not sleep. I would stay awake, just in case. I lay there watching the stars above the open tent. Slowly, clouds moved across them and covered the sky. Hours passed. Then Thomas's breathing changed. It became slower and quieter, like he was trying not to be heard. I kept my head still and looked at him from the corner of my eye. His eyes were open. He was staring directly at me. Neither of us blinked for what felt like forever. Eventually, I looked back up at the sky, but I still felt his gaze on me. I felt it all night. Those eyes studying me. Those eyes